Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today, in the spirit of the October Halloween season, I decided that I would recommend some of my favorite eerie October reads. So I personally haven't read very many spooky or scary books. It's not necessarily that I'm afraid to read books like that, because I actually really do enjoy some horror movies, but in the past they've never been something that I've been drawn towards, and this year I'm trying to change that, and I'm trying to read some more scary and spooky books. So since I haven't read many, I can't really recommend any scary books for you guys, so instead I decided that I would cater more to the magical, whimsical, eerie side of Halloween and recommend some of my favorite books that I think fit into that category. Most of these are very popular books. A lot of them are from series that you've probably heard of, so I'm not recommending anything that's too out there or too new, but I think these are also just great to be reread during this time of year as well. I've definitely reread some of these in October, and I definitely plan to reread many of these as well this October. So without any further ado, let's get into all the books. So the first books that are on my list are all part of a series, and that is The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a very popular YA paranormal series that follows these four boys, Gansey, Ronan, Noah, and Adam, and this one girl, Blue, as they go on these adventures trying to find this dead Welsh king. But this series has lots of dreamlike qualities to it. There are lots of ghosts and psychics and crystal balls and just a lot of things that you'd think of when you think of October and Halloween. This story also deals with topics of life and death in a very literal sense, because we have things like ghosts and everything throughout it. So I think that all of those things combined really makes this the perfect book to pick up in October. It is just so fitting for the season, and I think that reading it during this time will definitely enhance your reading experience. So the next book on my list I recommend literally all the time, but I can't make this video without including this book, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And actually I recently found out that this edition with the red pages is actually called the Halloween edition. I think this came out like a few years ago or something on Halloween as like a special edition, which I just think it's really fitting. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful and definitely gives off those Halloween vibes. I've talked this book to death, but if you don't know, The Night Circus is about this magical circus that only appears at night, and the circus serves as a venue for these two magicians who are in a competition with one another. There's so much more to the story than that is very much surface level, but I can't give anything else away. The writing in this book is absolutely exquisite. It is so descriptive, and it will literally evoke every single one of your senses. You'll be able to vividly imagine the circus. You'll be able to smell every single one of the foods as you're walking through. It's just unlike anything else I've read in that way. And the circus venue I think is absolutely perfect, because I don't know if it's just around where I live, but in September and October there is always like a fair that comes into town, and I know that happens in a lot of different places in the US. So the circus kind of reminds me of like the fair or the carnival that comes into town every single year around this time. Also, like I said, because the writing is so vivid, as you're walking through the circus you can like smell all of the carnival foods, which again just reminds me of the fair. It also has ghosts and magic, and again, like the Raven Boys, kind of deals with life and death, so it has pretty much all of the Halloween goodness that you could ask for. The next book on my list is similar to The Night Circus, but that is Karvall by Stephanie Garber. This is an arc, so this book actually doesn't come out until January 2017, I believe, but I still wanted to mention it in this video because once it comes out next year, I think it will be perfect to pick up around this time. Karvall is the first book in a fantasy series that follows these two sisters who are really invested in the Karvall, which is basically just a carnival, kind of like the Night Circus, where the circus like travels to different cities. Karvall also does the same thing, and it's very, very exclusive, so it never comes back to the same city twice. And the main character has always dreamt of going to Karvall, and one year her and her sister finally get to go, and the story just takes off from there. I don't really want to give away more because then I'll get into spoilers, but I will say that this book is very, very suspenseful and mysterious and dark at times, and it's just a lot of fun. There are a lot of dreamlike, mysterious undertones to this as well, so you'll constantly be questioning whether or not what you're reading is actually happening. I also think that the setting for this is very eerie and very much in the spirit of October and Halloween. Karvall itself takes place on this island that is kind of deserted, and there's this street that's like a cobblestone street, or at least that's like how I imagine it in my mind. But there are a bunch of like closed shops on the street, and it's very quiet and no one is there, and the shop owners are all kind of weird and mysterious, and I don't know what it is about it, but that kind of reminds me of some of the Halloween Town movies. So if you want to read something that's a bit suspenseful and will keep you on your toes and keep you guessing, then I definitely recommend picking this one up once it comes out. The next book on my list is actually a graphic novel, and that is Anyas Ghost by Vera Borskal. This is probably the scariest recommendation I have on this list. This graphic novel is about a girl named Anya who's a high schooler, and she gets visited visited by this ghost. I won't really say why, because I think going into this without really knowing too much about the plot will make it a lot more enjoyable. And we follow her story and the ghost's story, and we see how they intertwine. This one on the surface, and especially at the very beginning, starts off very light, and then as the story goes on, it gets a lot darker and darker. That was one of the aspects that I really enjoyed about this graphic novel. It's also somewhat comedic, so you have some of that comic relief at times, which is also really nice. Even though it's not necessarily a scary read and the ghost isn't too scary, this definitely has darker, eerier undertones to it, which is why I think that it would be perfect to pick up around this time. It's also fairly short, so you can sit and read it in one sitting. I read this around October last year, and I really enjoyed it. I think it would be the perfect thing to just, if you want to read something that's not going to terrify you on Halloween night and you're not doing anything else, you can definitely pick this one up and enjoy it in one sitting. The next book on my list is probably the lightest one I have to recommend, and that is Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is a middle grade fantasy book that follows the story of this wizard named Howl and this girl named Sophie, and it's kind of just their adventures together. If you haven't seen the very popular Studio Ghibli movie that is based off of this book, I highly recommend that as well. This story is just very magical and whimsical, and that's why I think that it would be perfect to read at this time of year. You also have witches and wizards, which fit in very well with the theme of Halloween, and I definitely recommend watching the movie along with this because it is so visually stunning, and I think it is just the perfect thing to watch around this time of year. The next book on my list is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. This is Crooked Kingdom, the second book in the duology. This is a very dark YA fantasy series that follows these 6 characters as they're commissioned to go on this heist. So we're following around this group of criminals, essentially. We have thieves and sharpshooters and assassins, and it is just one of the greatest series I have ever read. The thing about this one that I think makes it perfect to read at this time of year is how dark and mysterious and suspenseful it is. Like I mentioned, it's a heist novel, so you're constantly going to be on your toes. It is very much an adventure type of story. You're going on this adventure with the rest of the characters, but it also deals with some very heavy, dark topics as well. And because they're all criminals, you're dealing with a lot of morally gray, kind of anti-hero characters. This book also discusses a lot of the line between good and evil and what is right and what is wrong. So you get a lot of that in here, which again, I think really adds that eerie vibe to it and makes it the perfect October read. The next book on my list is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This story follows this young boy named Connor who gets visited by this monster in his dreams, or at least he thinks it's his dreams, and he's not really sure if the monster is real or if it's just his imagination. That's all I'll really say for the synopsis because this story has a lot more to it and it deals with very serious issues and it has very dark undertones and overtones. It's also a very depressing book, so if you're looking for something that's a little bit more sad to read around this time of year, I definitely suggest this one. I cried so much while reading this book, but I absolutely loved it. But what I really think adds to the eerie atmosphere of this book are the illustrations in it. The book was illustrated by Jim Kay, and his artwork is absolutely gorgeous. It definitely has that like Halloween October feel to it. They're all in black and white, and they're all kind of like creepy and unsettling, and it's a really beautiful book. So similar to Anyas Ghost, if you want to pick up something that's a lot shorter and you can just read in one sitting, I'd highly suggest this one, especially if you're looking for a good cry. And finally, the last book I have to recommend is another series or trilogy, and that is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. I've realized that even though my channel name is based off of these books, I rarely ever mention them in videos, so I decided that I would include it in this video. All of you probably already know what this series is about. It is the prequel to the Mortal Instruments series, and we follow some of the shadow hunters in the London Institute in the 1800s. This book has demons and wizards and clockwork monsters, and I think all of those things fit in very well with Halloween and October. I also think that the London 1800s setting is very fitting for that theme as well. The characters in this book are really what make it for me. They're so interesting. The relationships in here are so wonderful. You'll get so invested into all of them. But again, it is a much darker story, especially compared to the Mortal Instruments series. So if you're looking for something that you can just get really invested into, something that is kind of on the lighter side in terms of plot, but something that is still going to give you those October Halloween vibes, I definitely recommend picking this one up or giving it a reread. Alright guys, so that is it for my eerie October recommended reads. Let me know in the comments down below, what are some of your favorite books to pick up around this time of year? If you'd like to follow me on any of my social media, all of my links are in the description box as always. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!